Hello everyone, welcome to Phoenix Gaming. I'm Nick Henning, and today we are walking through the Acquire semifinal from the World Series of Boardgaming. Now you might be saying, hey, you just did a video on Acquire. That was the Acquire final for the tournament. And the players at this table are not Acquire experts. Actually, I think that's gonna be one of the fun things about this video is that the three of them got put into this game essentially by random. Josh in the top left won Brass Birmingham. Brent in the top right won Catan, Settlers of Catan. And Gray at the bottom is actually the other double ring winner from this tournament. He won Splendor and Dune Imperium. And then the three of them essentially got randomly seated at this Acquire table. Of the three of them, it seems that Brent specifically has the most experience in Acquire, so we're going to see how that plays out for him against these other two gentlemen, Josh and Gray, who won some, arguably heavier games than Settlers of Catan. Acquire is the oldest game that's in this tournament, and we're going to see how it goes. Per usual, by the way, I am covering the hosts that actually did the commentary of this video. If you want to, you can go check them out in the World Series of Boardgaming YouTube channel. And right above me, I have what is the same Excel sheet that I use to track the events of the last game. I'm going to explain that to you as we get started here. But this time I actually recorded it separately, so I'm not going to be maintaining it. Hopefully all I've done is actually sync it up perfectly for when I maintained it from before watching this video on my first playthrough recording. Before we dive into the thing, I do want to explain to you what you can see on this. Josh, Brent, and Gray at the top of this Excel sheet right here are going to show you in the colors what different stocks they have. They're going to, the number on the left, the sort of like $6,000 that you see there on the left side is going to indicate their cash on hand. The number on the right in the black bold is going to indicate essentially how much value they are at if they liquidated all their stocks, which you do at the end of the game, assuming no shareholder bonus, which is obviously a very significant portion of this game. Below that is sort of the details, like I'm going to keep track of the size of each of the hotels, and the stocks purchased are going to be calculated automatically based on what these three gentlemen have, and then their price and bonuses are going to be automatically calculated based off the size of the hotels according to the game sheet. Same with stocks remaining, and then at the bottom are the names of those various hotels in case I decide to refer to them by their hotel names rather than their colors, which seems very unlikely to me throughout the course of this recording. Without any further ado, let's go ahead and kick off. We are going to start recording, and hopefully I've done a good job of syncing these guys up. We'll see how it goes. The players have already gone through setup here, and we're going to see that Brent is going to be the leading player. He just happened to randomly go first, and very fortunately for him, he had a match tile right at the beginning of the game. Obviously, this is kind of the dream of what you want to have at the beginning. And we see right off the bat, he is choosing something different from the player in the Acquire final. He says, I'm going to have my opening hotel be Saxon, the cheapest one of the two cheapest hotel chains that exists in the game. Choosing the cheapest one, I think, says a lot about what you're doing with your game, right? Like he is saying, I want there to be a fair amount of leeway time before I'm concerned about getting a merger, because liquidity is a huge, huge issue in the Acquire game. So by spending only $600 to buy those three extra stocks instead of spending another $400 per a Phoenix or a Quantum stock, those purple and teal stocks that are more expensive, he's going to leave himself with more cash going into the later parts of the game. Now, that's likely true that the same is going to be true of his opponents if they start, buying into red stocks themselves. But it entirely depends essentially on how the flow of the game goes and where those mergers come up. But it's certainly a more conservative play to lead off, I think, with the cheaper hotel chains. And then Gray's going to kick off and also open a hotel chain. So right off the bat, we've got two strong starts from these gentlemen as they get their free stocks. Gray's going to follow suit and take the other cheap one as Zeta here. Now, the other thing I'll comment on is the most value you can get in opening a hotel chain by itself is just opening Phoenix and Quantum, the more expensive ones, because you get a free stock. And so you'll notice that Brent's value, in that bold area, and same with Gray, is up to 6,200 because the both of them now have one free stock in their various hotel chains. And then Gray is going to go ahead and buy up to 4 so that he's got that safe sort of dominant shareholder position. Now, the funniest start here, of course, is if Josh could trigger off of that other spot and we'd have a 3 hotel starting game. But given that Gray's going through the end of turn card stuff to make sure that he's done all the steps, and then is going to pass it to Josh, who's going to think about it. I think Josh is going to, would windmill slam another free hotel here, but he unfortunately isn't going to be able to do that. You see, he's sitting here thinking about what he's going to do instead. And so I'm going to take this opportunity to start talking about what he can do in this position. So, he still wants to buy stock. He's going to spend $600 in stock because you can buy up to 3 stocks per turn. So it's $200 a piece. And he's going to go ahead and pick up all yellows or all reds or a mixture of yellow and red. If I was in Josh's position this turn, and I'm not opening a new hotel chain, which I can tell you right now that he isn't, I would pick up a mixture of the two of them, basically thinking I can be second place in the both of them and also sort of pressure the players into needing to maybe kind of protect their stocks a little bit. And if I can't have my own hotel chain, I'll have sort of this like mediocre hotel chain second place, and hopefully they can do the work and I can kind of ride their coattails. Instead, though, he goes ahead and buys 3 yellows in the Zeta chain. That's Gray's chain, leaving Brent basically alone and uncontested in ownership of his hotel. So the reason I like that maybe buying 2-1 is that by buying 2 in, let's say, Zeta and then 1 in Saxon, Josh is still saying, hey, if Gray, if you want to protect yours, you're going to have to buy some extra because I could go jump from 2 up to 5. On the other hand, if Josh does decide to do a 2-1 split, let's say he puts 2 into Zeta, and then Brent goes and buys 3 Zetas, all of a sudden Josh is then kind of underdog, right? He's got 2 stocks into 3 stocks. And I guess that could be a really bad situation too. But because he's got 1 of the red stocks, he could then put pressure on Brent by essentially tying him in majority shareholder by buying the 3 stocks there if Brent decides to get cheeky with that 2-1 split. I think that is probably how I would go about it myself. We see Brent takes a pretty quick turn here. He just locks up his situation in Saxon, which I think makes the most sense. There's absolutely no reason for him to get into the contested Zeta market at this point in time. And he just throws a tile on the corner of the board saying, hey, if this is a new hotel chain, it's going to start a merger really quickly. We like to see that. If it's going to eventually expand into that red hotel, that's okay too. One of the things we can't really see, and I tried to with Gray's hand here, particularly with the camera, is to see what tiles the players have, because understanding what they're holding onto, what their options are, what they're waiting for, I think is a really deep part of the acquire strategy that I haven't really been able to figure out so much throughout the course of these recordings, these viewings of mine with acquire. And I'm sure that folks, again, who are much more experienced than I am, could go ahead and do that. And you're going to see that Gray is going to hop up to 7 stocks in Zeta. He's just going to kind of copy Brent's situation. I think his hands are a little bit more tied than Brent's were in this decision. He doesn't want Josh to come in and take the majority shareholder over of it. So he's going to go ahead and have 7 of those yellow stocks. The yellow stocks on camera, by the way, look like orange stocks. So just beware that if you're looking at them picking up stocks and they're yellow or orange, it gets weird. So the coloration is horrible. I don't know if it's the camera or the actual game. I've never played this particular edition of Acquire. I played the other ones. And Josh then basically says, okay, well, I'll do kind of like what Nick had suggested last round with that 2-1 split. Instead, I'll basically have just bought 3 one round and then 3 the next round, and I'll be second place in both of these hotel chains, which again, I think is about as good as he can ask for without getting a free stock off the beginning. Absolutely nothing wrong with that. And then what happens here is huge, as Josh had played out that 2B location And Brent says, yep, I can do something about that, and plays his 1B. Now, he didn't do it last turn, so I can't help but wonder if he drew 1B out of the bag at the end of the prior turn, and it sort of went a full lap around, or if for some reason he was waiting to open a new hotel chain. Let's speculate on both of them. If he was waiting to open a new hotel chain, I think it's because he didn't want to be attacked in Saxon. He wanted to get up to 7 just to sort of have a much healthier buffer there while opening a new hotel chain. So that's an option. That being said, no one could have taken over Saxon. And so the only way he'd be concerned is if both Gray and Josh essentially split across his stocks, sort of like a semi-collusion-y kind of way of approaching that situation. But I think it's also just fair to assume that he just happened to rip that 1B and says, okay, I'm going to go ahead and open the orange hotel chain. I really wish that he'd open green or blue because they're functionally the same and would be a little bit nicer for our color palette here on the left side of the board. But maybe he just likes hot colors because Brent's running hot with those draws. And he will instead buy up to 4 stocks in orange, making himself the early majority share leader in 2 hotels, and I think in just a great situation. Gray makes a really funky play here, and I'm not sure what the entire logic of it is. He puts the Saxon hotel chain up to 3 size, which is really nice for Brent. You see that his shareholder value essentially just popped all the way up there. Now, I guess the thinking, and this came up in the Acquire game as well, or the previous Acquire game, the Acquire final, is that now Saxon is probably going to be the acquiring hotel. It's bigger, and so if a 2 chain pops up near it and it goes to merge, then it's not really going to be Brent's choice or the choice of the person laying down the tile. Saxon is just straight up going to be the one that ends up taking over. And that is, it's going to, in the long term, be fine for Brent, right? Because he's getting a bigger and a bigger hotel chain with these 7 stocks that he bought for dirt cheap, $200 a piece, that are going to keep kind of rising in price as that hotel gets bigger and bigger. So I don't love the expand the hotel play unless Gray is holding a situation where he knows he's going to start a hotel chain and then trigger a merger off of it. I think it just is nice for other players. And we saw this in the Acquire final. I think every game does play different, but the player who kind of got like stuck with not having the merging corporation and people kept playing tiles onto it as like a way to just sort of pass instead of being forced into like the heavy interaction spots, that player ended up winning, even though they had no liquidity over the course of the game. They had all the power just in terms of raw cash and capital, essentially when action did start taking place. So I don't love expanding that way. Gray goes ahead and decides that he's going to buy 3 orange stocks, which I think makes sense. He's not going to move into red, doesn't really want any yellow. So going for second place on orange is sort of the way to go here. Josh here thinking again, which doesn't bode well for him opening a hotel chain. He's the only one who hasn't gotten a free stock here. I mean, Brent's off to an early lead here. It's not a big deal. I don't think that the early lead here makes any kind of significant difference. But Josh throws something out there. I assume that, his options he's kind of considering with his tiles is what can go where. And I do know that folks throwing on the corners or on the edges there is sort of a preferred strategy in a vacuum, because those tiles along the edges have fewer points of contact for your opponents to make hotel chains, and they also are less likely to be significant tiles for mergers that you want to be holding in the future. So holding that sort of more powerful central region is good. Now Josh goes ahead and he drops 3 into orange, I assume because he's sort of thinking, hey, like this is the hot new hotel chain. I can kind of get involved in anything, in everything. I'm maybe going to be second place in a lot of stuff, but it creates this very tense moment where all 3 players are now involved in the orange stock, and Josh is the last to buy, which I think isn't going to work out well for him. Let's see. It'd be if Brent we see buys 3 more. If Gray does, it'd be 6. If Josh, again, that's another 6, so that's 19 stocks purchased. And then Brent could buy 3, Gray could buy 3, and then they're completely out. And Josh is just stuck being third place in orange. And being third place in a hotel chain, I think, is particularly bad, especially in a 3-player game where you really kind of stood out as having done something that's it only kind of will cash in based on essentially the size of that hotel chain. I think the play that I would have liked more for Josh is to buy 3 more shares of Saxon, which is the same price as the orange ones at this point in time. So no liquidity differences for him. But then Gray would be attacking Brent's orange with 3 orange into 4 of Brent's, which he then bought up to 7 on his turn. And Josh would have 6 red into Brent's 7 red, which would have allowed, essentially, it would force Brent to choose, do I want to protect orange or do I want to protect red? And given that, Gray had maybe a free hotel chain, that might have been Josh's opportunity to kind of jump over and become the bigger hotel owner. And now it's even harder because Gray goes ahead and continues expanding that red chain, which again, I think is mostly beneficial for Brent at this point in time. Those stocks being more expensive makes it harder for other players to interact. And then unfortunately for Josh, this is kind of playing out in the way that I said before. Gray continues to buy stocks in orange. And now we're in a situation where 16 of the 25 stocks have been purchased in Hydra, which has just expanded at an accelerating rate as the hotel Hercules chops off their heads and more Hydras show up, but only in stock form because it's a teensy tiny little hotel chain, just like Zeta is. So now Josh is in this position where I'm a bit concerned about what it is that he can do now. Because if he continues to chase orange, he's going to get boxed out. If he wants to move into doing the red thing, which again, I think is still an option here because he can kind of split the stocks. Brent would be in a situation where he'd have to choose which one he's going to protect, orange or red. But red has just, again, become more expensive, up to $400 now, which of course generates more liquidity issues for Josh in the long run if he's spending more money than the other players at this moment. So not a great situation, and I think Gray's choice to expand the hotel chain to size 4 makes it harder for Josh to say, all right, you know what, I'm not going to fight you for the oranges. I'll concede that those 3 were a mistake and move into the reds. I think what we're going to see here, though, is that he takes the oranges. Yeah, exactly. And now we're in this, again, situation where there's just a ton of stock for this one teensy tiny little hotel chain. I have to assume that some number of these players are holding tiles kind of surrounding that chain, thinking that it's going to expand in size or thinking that it's going to maybe be acquired soon. And maybe all 3 of them are, or maybe both Josh and Gray are, and Brent just kind of like started off by opening a hotel chain. So that's why all the pressure exists on here. That is my assumption about the stock situation, or simply just, wanting to kind of chase this sort of like a little bit of a sunk cost, perhaps, perception here. I assume Brent's going to go up to 10. He does exactly that. He's just going to take that lead with his stocks and keep kind of running with it. I do think it's quite interesting. I think at this stage in the game, Brent tends to take the quickest turns, and you'll see sort of later in the game he's gonna change his flow quite a bit, and I think that's something that is often the case. When you're right, Brent's in the leader position here. Like, he just wants to essentially play defense on where he's at. Everything is good. He has the extra stocks from expanding those hotel chains. Everybody's just kind of playing a bunch of crap tiles onto the board. Not a lot of action that way. And so he's just going to kind of keep playing defense here. And it's nice for him that he doesn't have to decide whether he's going to protect red or orange, Saxon or Hydra in this situation, and could kind of continue from there. Now, one thing that I think could be worth considering for, Gray doesn't want to wind up being third in orange, so almost certainly he's going to go ahead and buy more oranges here so he doesn't wind up in third place, and that'll be the last 3 stocks of orange. But he really only needs to buy 2 of them to essentially be locked into second place there. He does indeed go ahead and buy 3. I think personally, just to be cute, I would have maybe purchased 2 and then 1 of Zeta, because Zeta has sort of that kitty corner 4C and 5D there. And it might be that the price of Zeta stock kind of jumps up really quickly. And so maybe I would try to get in at the 200 mark now, because it's not like that extra 9th stock in orange is really going to help him. And further, I think there's a little bit of there's a marginal benefit in having the number of stocks for what hopefully will become an acquired corporation be even, because you're going to then trade them all in at 2 for 1, and you don't necessarily need to sell the last one for its low amount of money that usually the acquired corporations are worth. They don't tend to be worth as much as stocks in the other corporations, which is why you might do that 2 for 1 trade when you're getting acquired. Oh my God, like the name of the game. It is really funny watching this Excel sheet and like watching myself kind of like play catch up here and move around. And Josh has a really exciting moment here where he gets to start opening his own hotel chain. And he chooses to open America, which is another kind of one of the middling hotel chains. So, that generates $300 free for him as he gets that free stock. And we'll go ahead and actually buy 3 stocks in it, putting himself into the lead there. And that's a fortunate timing for it, because it's not like he was going to be buying more oranges at that point in time. And anything that he would be choosing to buy, he would only be threatening to contest, majority ownership of those corporations. So he doesn't really have any good buys this turn, except for the fact that he managed to open a new hotel chain. So that is a really, really nice situation for him. And we see ourselves now in this funny situation that Josh is actually ahead of Gray, even though it kind of feels like Gray was maybe doing better there. And in part, it's because Josh has, the couple stocks in Saxon, which continue to increase in value, as well as having that 1 free stock over in blue there. Brent's going to continue living the dream as he opens another hotel chain, and not just any hotel chain, but a hotel chain deeply at threat of being merged into yellow or red. Alternatively, of course, green could be the acquiring corporation if it was eating yellow, if there was some kind of kitty corner spot there from yellow. And that is so nice for Brent, that hotel right there. Like, what a sweet tile to have drawn. I assume he just drew it on his previous round, because now if red acquires green, he's the majority shareholder of both. That's the dream, right? He gets all of the money, or the majority of the money, for green as it gets acquired. And red continues to be worth more and more value, which he's holding so many more stocks than the other players on. Great situation for him to be in. I guess the only disadvantage is now he's got 3 corporations that he's defending, but orange is no longer a corporation that needs to be defended because all of those hotel shares have been purchased out of the game. Gray's going to go ahead and move into green, which again, I think he kind of just doesn't. I would maybe have done something cute again with like a two green, 1 blue or something like that. Or yeah, I mean, I do think that Brent is the player that you're kind of chasing after, so you want to put pressure on them. But picking up a stock in a stock in an American may have been the choice I would have made there. That being said, the players are starting to get really broke right now, right? Like they're running down to the $1,000 range, and even though they might not be tracking exactly what each other's money is, they probably have noticed that they've been spending essentially the exact same amount of money as each other throughout the course of the whole game. So they might actually at this point know that, hey, we're all plummeting in on that 1,200 mark. We are at about maybe 1 or 2 more rounds of stock purchases before the well really dries up. And Josh getting to cash in again with opening another hotel chain. So we have a game that goes from like not having a ton of hotel chains being opened in the first, 8 rounds or something like that. I didn't keep that good track. Well, I guess I could. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. It's only been the first 4 rounds. And then in the 5th and 6th rounds here, we're doubling the number of hotel chains that exist. And Josh is going to go ahead and put himself up to the majority shareholder in Phoenix. And this is really nice. All of a sudden, he goes from a position where I'm feeling worried about him to feeling really good. He's got his fingers in a lot of pies. He's second place in red. He's second place in yellow. He's first place in blue, first place in purple. The problem is that he's kind of sitting on these like dud orange stocks, and he doesn't have any green stocks. And green is the hotel chain, like I said before, that has the most points of contact with other hotels, which means there's a decent chance that it's going to get merged here. Now, I think that if Brent had the 4D tile, he would just slam it on the board, have red acquire green, and that would be just the absolute dream. Of course, that's not the situation that he's in right now, and so instead he's just going to kind of start another hotel chain. So we've got all 7 chains on the board. In the past 2 rounds, Brent and Josh have just been able to open back after, like one after the other, which sucks for Gray. Now, Gray's kind of like out of the situation and doesn't have a ton to do. But the nice opportunity here is that because Brent basically buys majority shareholder in Teal and Quantum here, Gray can suddenly take over the Green Corporation and be the majority shareholder. And if he's been paying a bit of attention to the cash, he would know that Brent is completely broke right now. So, I mean, that's a fair amount of attention you'd have to pay, actually. So I don't know that he knows that, but he knows that he's nearly broke. So he should have to assume that Brent is nearly broke, and he just bought stocks from one of the more expensive hotel chains. So this is a situation where I think Gray could capitalize by buying 2 greens and then 1 in blue or purple or teal to be second place in any of them. Placing something right there in the middle of the board, I don't think does a ton right now, but that's a kind of tile that I think a player might want to keep for later in the game, because as these hotel chains kind of get closer to each other, shenanigans can really happen in the middle here. So we see $1,200 come down for Gray. So he's going to buy 3 stocks. Oh, I hope he doesn't do 3 purple or 3 teal. I don't love it if that's the case. I don't remember exactly what he buys here. He buys 3 purple. Man, this is a play that I don't like for a couple of, well, I take it back. Purple is very likely to be acquired right here by either teal or blue. It has as many points of contact as the green hotel chain does, and we see that the green hotel chain hasn't been opened. That being said, Gray could get away with not buying 3 shares. He could get away with buying 1 share or 2 shares and still be there. So I think the ideal buy here would have been like a purple, a green, and then decide what you want to do. Do you want to, so that would be 700. Yeah, I probably would buy something like a purple and a green and a blue, or a purple, a green, and a blue would probably be what I would be buying here. And then you have $200 left over, so you could pick up another share of Zeta on the next turn, something like that. I don't think he needs to buy 3, though. If he's worried that Brent has extra money, I think 2 probably covers the spread there. And just like with Brent and 4D for that red-green, I think that if Josh had 11A or 10B, he would be slamming them down right now, being the majority shareholder in both those corporations and the only shareholder in the American corporation. Man, that would be so nice for him, because he could connect those hotel chains, cash out blue, and no one else would get anything. And that would put him in just such a commanding position. Clearly, he does not have that. And I now that I'm saying that out loud, I feel actually kind of even more passionately that Gray maybe wanted to buy one single blue stock just to prevent some shenanigans like that from happening. And then we're continuing to expand the Saxon hotel chain down here. I'm not sure what the tiles are that the players are holding. I have to assume that they have really limited options here, but at this point, it just feels like it's just making it bigger and bigger. We're at the point where it is just increasing the value of the stock. I guess there's a certain threshold where the hotel size increases at such a slow speed that it mostly doesn't matter anymore. But now it's kind of essentially becoming a safer and safer hotel. Like if green acquires yellow or yellow acquires green, red's still going to be the hotel that is bigger than the both of them in that moment. And I think that just benefits Brent, right? Like that's the person who really gets to do something of it. And I do suspect that we're going to hit a point in this game here where essentially players have fewer and fewer choices of what to play because they're dropping all these different points of contact on the board, right? Like that 9G that just got played by Brent. That's 4 tiles that you suddenly can't play because all 7 hotels are in play. And so it decreases players' options. And so, it might be the case where feel like you're leading, like Brent is in this situation. And you say to yourself, well, you know what? My goal is basically just to kind of clutter up the board to force players into making plays that they're maybe not as excited to make. And we're at this stage in the game now where everybody's broke. There's nothing to do. Everybody's got nothing left. And so we're going to kind of stare at each other until someone's able to kind of break the bank open. And the player or players that don't have the opportunity to get in on that sort of first merger cash in are going to be behind unless they very shortly afterwards have the opportunity to cash in themselves on a different kind of merger. So if you have hotel chains, you're looking to expand them towards other hotels to essentially ensure that a merger is going to happen for something that you like. What Gray does is he expands orange up into the corner. Again, I assume that he has some limited options at this point in time. But what that does mean is that it's less likely that orange is going to be the merging hotel, like the merged, the mergee, the one that gets acquired. How about that? And he's second there. He's second position, but he needs the cash, right? Everybody, he really needs the cash, and the ability to kind of cash in those stocks would be pretty powerful. Josh expands American here, which is interesting in a couple ways, right? Because now, I guess in a sense, it doesn't much. He can't do the cute play, right? Where blue and purple end up merging, and Josh is the only player who gets to cash out money on that exchange. Now it is essentially that blue is going to consume purple as the merger, and again, I assume he has limited options, and further. That hotel chain, right? Like Josh is the one who is going to be able to control it right now. And so no one really has enough stocks in the other nearby hotel chains that they're going to, be swapping 2-1 to take over American from him if there is a merger. But it is something that is interesting, right? That this concept of like, I want to expand my hotels. Oh, but I kind of want to be a loser at this point in time. Like my goal is to be eaten, not to be the eater, which is sort of counterintuitive to generally the strategy of what you think you're going to be doing as just like a person in late stage capitalism, right? Like what is it that you're trying to do here? It's probably acquire other people. I'm not quite sure what's going on. Oh, they're just putting this in a funky position, essentially, so that Brent, who ran off to the restroom, is going to see what was played here. And this I think, is actually quite... I like this play a lot. Expanding the green hotel there does a couple things. One, if red winds up acquiring the green hotel, yes, it's a bit better for Brent, but it's also better for Gray, right? Like the share bonus increased from 3,000 to 4,000. And Gray, as the second place person, is going to get half of that. And he's doubled the chance, or double the number of tiles that can connect the red hotel to the green hotel. Great. We love that. I think even though that benefits Brent more, like that's a good way for Gray to kind of like get out of the liquid trap. The other thing that it does is if there is a merger that can take place between green and yellow, if suppose, let's say Brent drew 4C or 5E, now if a merger were to happen there, he wouldn't have the choice of is it green or yellow that's merged. It's going to be yellow that's merged, and all of a sudden that isn't going to take place in the same way that he wants to, right? It's just going to be yellow that gets consumed there. And orange expanding there in the corner actually is quite interesting because it makes it a little bit harder for, again, those things to cash out on. I think Josh is probably incentivized to make it harder for that orange hotel to do anything, given that he's third place there. And man, those 6 stocks look really pretty miserable right now. Like imagine if he had just not bought anything those rounds, which of course would be pretty crazy, I think. But then he actually had that extra money to be buying some additional teals or blues or purples. And I didn't talk about this before, and I need to go all the way back to it. But on Josh's last purchase, he bought 2 teals, which I love because now he's sort of second place. And again, he's just got his fingers in every single pie except for green. And, he knew that he couldn't get to the situation where he was in second place. So aside from these sort of like 6 orange stocks, which are a bummer, he basically is just first or second place in everything else he's interacting with. That being said, that red hotel chain just continues to expand and expand and expand. And you can see how that's basically making Brent's net value, that 12,400 that you see up there in the top right, so huge because the value of Saxon is now up to 600. He has tripled the essentially value of each of the stocks that he bought, an initial 200. All 7 of them have tripled in value and risen up to this huge number now of what he owns. And this is exactly what we saw happen in the Acquire final, except for that player owned expensive hotels. I think he opened Phoenix maybe to start off with. And as that hotel continued to expand, it just had even more of a ramp there. Now it doesn't multiply quite so nicely because it has a higher starting numerical value, but it does actually increase the amount of money that he's getting. And really the amount of money, I guess, is what's most important if you're not able to do anything. And now we see this funny situation where these like tiles are being played out in this like crisscross checkerboard pattern because look at that bottom right side of the board. Just nothing is playable, right? Like everything in the F column except for like, or F row except for like 8F is unplayable because it touches something else or generates a merger that maybe players are or are not interested in depending on their situation. That G row is also one where there's just like points of contact everywhere or expanding the red hotel chain. And so there's not a lot of action essentially on the bottom half of this board. If you're a player in this game, you're really hoping that you're holding tiles in the top half. And I just have to assume that they have very limited options at this point in time. Gray drops a 9D there, which can be interesting because American can get huge or Quantum can get huge sort of out of nowhere. And those stock prices then jump up quite a bit, right? And when you have the 2-size hotel chain, every single tile adds another $100 to the price. And so these things could probably, get out of hand pretty quickly. Again, I don't know that any of these players want their hotels to be bigger. They want to kind of be the loser for the merger to happen. But that being said, it does always increase your value. And like we see that Brent's score right now is the higher score because of the fact that the hotels that he owns are the ones that are continuing to expand in size, right? He has red and orange and green. And with the exception of American, the blue one, those are the biggest hotels on the board. Again, I think that this play probably is an extension of players have pretty limited options. I'm not sure sort of what Brent's code is over there with the face up and face down piles, which ones are maybe playable or not playable throughout the course of this game. But this is like a stalemate situation, right? And I am very curious, and we'll never really know this. Does anyone have some of the merger tiles that exist out there, but it's not their stock? Like, for instance, does Gray have 11A? No, he doesn't, because he'd be okay with purple being acquired by the blue place. But maybe Brent doesn't has 11A, and he doesn't want that merger to happen. So there's this sort of like a certain amount of information that the players have. Does Josh have 3F? 4F, right? That connects the red and green. Maybe he does and maybe he doesn't, right? Like it's a tough situation where you're not the majority shareholder, because you'd like the stocks, you'd like the money, but the person who has the most getting more than you, it's messy. It's especially messier, I think, in a 3-player game. I think in a 4 or 5-player game of Acquire, like, you don't want to be the person who just like sort of totally missed out on everything. And so you instead say, hey, you know what? I'm just going to go ahead and run it. A 3-player game, it's a lot tighter. Josh expanded that Quantum Hotel, kind of what I was talking about before, and again, I think probably only has limited options at this point in time, into a 4-chain, which is really interesting and basically means that if that teal and that American were going to connect, Josh is pretty okay in either situation, and either of them can kind of run what the merger looks like. And Gray plays up there at the top, expanding American to sort of say, nope, if things are gonna happen in the top right, American is not going to be the controlling corporation, which is of course the acquired corporation. There we go, which is really what we would like to see happen. And so I'm wondering actually right now if Josh is holding a merger tile and he's expanding that teal hotel chain so that he can force the merger at 9C and have blue be the acquired corporation. That's really the ideal situation for him, because then he really is the only player that's holding on to any value of that. He'll get money, the other players won't, and all of a sudden he gets to start kind of breaking up what people have and changing the paradigm there. All right, and so Brent has the control there, and probably what he's really nervous about is what happens if Quantum gets into the situation where it's too big. And it's a very, very powerful tile for him to be controlling right now. Further, he's going to say, hey, you know what? Quantum's going to be consumed here, because if Quantum's consumed, I'm going to get paid out. So is Josh, which is nice. But Brent's going to take the lion's share of the cash there. And there were that Quantum sort of expanded in size because I think of this gambit that players were trying to make, or again, not having options, but it expanded in size. And so, the initial investment of buying 3 stocks at $400, they're now valued at, I deleted it and marked it to 0 because I'm a dummy. But they had expanded to $700. So nearly doubles the value of each of those stocks, plus the $7,000, and this is the huge part, $7,000 that he gets off of those stocks for the majority shareholder bonus. Josh is going to get $3,500, which just completely changes both of their paradigms in terms of what they can do. They're suddenly able to play the game again for quite a while. And I think both players decide that they're going to keep their Quantum stocks here because they have a lot of money, and there's a ton of spaces to open new hotel chains on the board. And so, Brent is happy to see someone open it, because even if they get their one free one and then buy 3 more, well, he's tied for first still. And then he'll have the opportunity to buy after them. So, of course, he's going to keep them. And a similar logic, but with less power, Josh is going to keep his stocks, selling those 2 stocks. There's going to be more action with Quantum in the future, very likely. Now, the question that I'm really curious about with Gray is Gray motivated to start a new hotel chain if it was teal? He'd get a free stock, so that's nice. He also have an option of something to play, but all of a sudden he just generated a hotel chain for Brent and Josh, who are really the ones who get to get value out of that. So yeah, you get one free thing, but you've given them an option for something that can be essentially consumed in the future. Now, inevitably, on this kind of board, I think that Quantum is going to open again, unless you can somehow just make it so that Americans just kind of scooping up all those empty floater tiles out there. But I'm going to have to imagine that someone very, very soon is going to open a new chain. And the dream really for the other players who are behind Brent at this point in time is that Josh opens it, right? Like opens that hotel chain, gets the free stock, and then buys over Brent's majority shareholder amount because he has cash on hand. Gray here is just stuck in a really crappy position, and this is, I think, one of the things that makes me not love this game so much. But what can he do here? He has no money. He has no way of merging his corporations, and so he's kind of in this stuck situation where if he opens Quantum, he's kind of helping those other players, but at least he gets the one stock. And he's really just hoping for a merger to happen where he can cash out. He needs that yellow hotel to be acquired. And this is where Brent, being the majority shareholder in 4 corporations, aside from the fact that that made him the richest and the most powerful, is so significant because he's basically saying, look, a merger that takes place, I'm the winner. I'm going to be walking away with more money than anybody else. And essentially just get to take advantage of that. I'm really curious, I don't know how much people do like this kind of analysis of a game throughout, but like if this kind of analysis existed for games, I'd be very curious to see how often it is that players switch positions, because Brent here is in first place, Josh is in second, and Gray is in third. And we are not going to see a follow-up merger on this turn here, which would make a huge difference. And I don't know how often that's the case where a follow-up merger is the place. But the point I'm trying to kind of originally continue with, is that there's a little bit to me that feels like Acquire has this kind of inevitable push forward in terms of who is the leader. Like Brent is in charge, and he uses his huge amount of cash to buy 3 stocks in purple, because now he's just saying, look, I'm going to be a part of anything that happens. There's no activity that can take place in this game that I'm not going to get a little bit of a taste of. And he has that opportunity, he has that flexibility because he's already in charge. And I think the only way for the players to do that, like to prevent this, is to essentially attack his stocks, right? They have to like split his stocks. And very fortunately, Gray has the merger, the situation that I described before. If he doesn't have this merger, I don't know how he doesn't just like die in this game, where he's not just sitting there while the other players are picking up more stocks and interacting with the game, where he just loses. So very, very fortunately, this is going to generate a ton of cash for him as well. Not quite as much as what happened over with the Quantum stock, because this is just a piddly 2 chain. So a $2,000 bonus for him that'll then also give $1,000 to Josh. And that's breathing room, right? That's kind of what is needed there. And the really fun part about this merger is that now Gray has the opportunity to do exactly what I was just talking about and attack Brent's stock, attack his position. All he needs to do is swap 4 of his Zeta shares for 2 green shares, and then he's in charge. He gets to be in the lead there. It's also well worth it because those Zeta shares are $200 a piece. So upgrading them to $700 green shares, and the stock price skyrocketed of that because of the size skyrocketed of it, is just a huge upgrade in value, to the point that I actually wonder if it would have made sense to swap 6 for 3 shares of fusion, and really just kind of put the keys into the ignition of that. But instead he says, look, I want to keep those 3 stocks of Zeta around in case that hotel chain gets opened again. And that's sort of interesting, because then if Josh ends up opening the hotel chain, he's leader because he has 3, has the 1 extra. and he's not motivated to swap into green. So I think that if I was gray, I maybe would have gone down to just the one yellow stock and just accepted that if Josh opens the hotel chain, he gets to be in charge of Zeta now, and good for him. It could be that gray is essentially hoping that by the end of this round, he'll be the one that gets to open the yellow chain. Maybe the others are motivated to open quantum. And if that's the case, then keeping the 3 yellows does make sense. And he goes ahead and buys 3 stocks into purple here, which puts him into the firm lead, which is certainly very interesting. It makes me wonder if he has one of those 4 merger tiles for getting Phoenix acquired by American here. And puts Brent into third on that stock, which is what the other players need to see. Now, unfortunately for Gray, it's not a cheap stock to buy. It's cheaper than any of the other hotel chains that he could buy. So actually, it's the cheapest available now. But that $1,200 for those 3 $400 stocks puts him down to $800, and all of a sudden he's basically gonna buy 1, maybe 2 stocks next turn, and that's it. He gets a little bit limited there. Josh is in a funny position now because he can kind of defend purple. If he opens a new hotel chain and opens quantum, he could just buy into quantum. If he opens a hotel chain and he opens yellow, he could buy into that and be the majority shareholder there. But I'm assuming that since he hasn't placed a tile that opens a hotel chain, he might just not have the pieces. A curious question here is if he does have the merger for purple into blue, do you play it right now? You know that you're second place. That would be his third minority shareholder for 3 mergers in a row, whereas Gray was lead on 2 of them and Brent was lead on the big one. I think that would put the players on relatively equal footing in terms of how much cash they have on hand or how much cash they made on hand. And I think would allow... This is one of those like 3-player dynamics where like in a sense, elevating the action options of the third player allows you to sort of try to put pressure on the lead player. But like the only way that they can put pressure on him is if they split what they're attacking with Brent. If they're all there fighting over oranges, fighting over purples, then the player who's ahead is just going to stay ahead, right? Like they need to find a way to sort of break the circumstances as they are, because Brent's whole value here, and they might not know this, but I suspect like know it in the way that we know that Brent's worth $19,000. But they probably have a sense of what that situation looks like. And I have to assume with that kind of play that Josh didn't have the opportunity to open a hotel chain. He definitely wants to do that if he does. And I think I don't know about the merger part of it because he goes ahead and buys 3 stocks in purple to defend, puts himself in the lead. I think that makes a lot of sense. And I'm happy to see it for the sake of competition in this game, right? Because Brent's now in pretty solidly third place lock with Phoenix there. That being said, he knows Gray's going to run out of cash really fast. So I don't know if he continues to sort of pressure that. I think it depends on what happens right now. And if I'm Brent, I'm just opening quantum if I have the tile to do so for his fifth free stock of the game. If that's the case. Let's see. What you got, Brent? He's thinking for a while, so maybe he doesn't have it. If he opened one, I suppose he could open yellow. No. He's going to go ahead and make a new hotel chain. There you go. He goes up. He gets his 5th stock for free, which is his 5th stock in Quantum because he already owned 4. That's pretty nice because they're immediately come in worth $500. So the value of that bumps him up another $2,500, bumps Josh up another $1,000. And that's a pretty sweet spot, right? It's right in the center of the board, which kind of knew as they were laying out their tiles there. Like, this has the person who has this connector here, who had the ability to open this new chain, this new hotel chain. Now this is going to get consumed by green or by blue, or even by red, depending on how kind of the tiles come out here. But it's just waiting to get eaten up so he could get that shareholder bonus in the stock again. And I really am cracking up at the concept of this in real life, that you like have this hotel chain, it gets taken down in a merger, which you would think would just like completely devastate the company forever. It comes back and you're like, haha, I've been supporting this hotel chain the whole time. And Gray's basically just going to kind of do everything that Brent is doing, but weaker, right? Like opens up a new hotel chain in Zeta, which is a cheaper, cruddier hotel that he has fewer stocks that he was able to keep in because he wanted to pressure the green situation. Brent, by the way, I thought made kind of an odd purchase where he purchased 2 purples and 1 teal. I suspect the purple purchase is to make it so that he can sort of leapfrog the other players if they get lazy with protecting purple. But it is what it is. Gray basically says, I'm fine with that whole situation. I'm just going to make sure that I'm majority shareholder in yellow. I want this guy to be consumed by blue someday in the near future. Maybe we'll expand a little bit into the corner down here. But I don't have big and long hopes for this, but I am going to be in charge when it all goes down. Further, Gray only has $800 on hand, so he doesn't have a lot of options of what to buy, and that yellow hotel chain certainly is dirt cheap. I think that's sort of maybe a nearly no-brainer play for Gray at this point in time. So now we see if Josh has the merger for purple. If he doesn't play it, I'm going to just go ahead and assume that he doesn't have it. I mean, he'd be giving Gray second place, and maybe he's concerned that he would give him some extra money. I think that would be... I guess he could wait a turn, but then he has to make sure that he protects the purple shares, and I think now's a good time to sort of cash them in, turn them into blue stocks at that 2-to-1 ratio. And, then there's a possibility that purple will rise from the grave again. That's actually kind of interesting, that sort of opportunity in the south there for purple to come back. Maybe you don't want to trade them 2-for-1, but the problem does come in with other people sort of moving into American and putting pressure on Josh. American stock are worth $800 a pop right now, maybe even up to $900 by the time they merge. I forget what the cut points are. I think it's like 10, 20, 30, but it might be 10 and 15, and 20, 15 might be one kind of in the middle there. Actually, now that I'm saying it out loud, I kind of more feel like that's the case. Doesn't much matter. We'll see it when it comes up. And Josh just kind of plays one of the diagonals here, probably one of his few choices. And I've marked down what he's paying, but it didn't mark down what he's taking just yet as he's thinking about it. Saxon. He decides to put the pressure on Brent with Saxon. Maybe he's realizing sort of what he said earlier in the game, which is, I've got to put the screws on him. in some way. So let's attack kind of the different aspects. I wonder what's better. Is Saxon better, or would Quantum have been better? Sort of is the same situation either way, where he puts himself into second place, but within spitting distance of ownership of that corporation. And he's definitely, a little bit struggling on liquid capital. I think I sort of like the idea of quantum purchase a little bit more. We see right now that it actually wouldn't have mattered because Brent just continues to have all of the tiles you need to have. I don't know how much this is lucky versus this is him sort of having saved kind of the most essential tiles that maybe touch certain hotel chains. But this is so sweet for him. Another $5,000 in his pocket, $2,500 for Josh. And I think Gray just kind of sinks further and further behind. Even though he managed to get that one merger, he's now back to being broke again. So unless he manages to merge yellow right now, because orange is not merging and he's second place there, that kind of sucks. One consolation prize is that the green stocks have just increased in value. So that's a much bigger hotel chain. And there actually is sort of a cute moment here. So it says 10 greens and 10 reds. So right now, in this moment, one of those hotel chains could consume the other. But once one of them gets the 11th hotel chain, they can't anymore. And so I do wonder essentially like what Gray could or would do in this moment. Looks like they all kept their shares in Quantum here. I think Brent could have considered swapping for even one green share just to tie there. But I guess he's not really trying to stick it to Gray, except for he'll just buy the green shares right out. This will allow Josh to kind of overtake him. So I wonder if he could have swapped two of those quantum into one of the greens, because then now he could also buy another red. No, that doesn't help, because he would need to be at 9. Do you need to buy two of them? Oh yeah, so that actually would work. What I was gonna say, swap into one of the greens, buy one green, buy two reds, and essentially that puts him in a situation where he's in charge of green by 1, he's in charge of reds by 3, and so if Josh wants to buy into continue buying into Saxon, at least he ties him. Excuse me. I had a long weekend of playing board games, so perhaps a bit ambitious to record this now, but I was excited. I set it up. When we look at those cash values, it's really kind of amazing how quickly the values have gotten out of hand. Gray's at 12,000. Brent is almost at 24,000, almost doubling Gray's score at this point in the game. But I think this is somewhere where you see two aspects of this design that are essential. One is the opacity, the fact that the players probably don't really know how much things are worth, where they're worth, how it's at, how many stocks people have, or counting sort of the values exactly. The other thing is that this is just an older design, I think, right? I think there's not so many games nowadays where you'd want to have essentially that level of blowoutness, and this game has it in spades. There's such a runaway leader situation. In the back of in the bottom left there, if you're checking out Gray's seat, you can see me behind there completely dejected, talking to Scott Sacenti, one of the judges, about a Ticket to Ride semifinal that I just lost. It was so close. It was so close. Having a conversation with him where I mostly want to run away and cry. But he's such a good guy. I actually just played Great Western Trail with him yesterday, and he beat me. He knocked me out. Actually, he beat me resoundingly. I got last place in that game. It was rough. We see that American has expanded, I think even more, or no, they're just kind of admitting to the fact that it is too large to be overtaken. I think it may have already been too large to be overtaken, which is only really relevant because now the green hotel chain is close enough that it actually could be consumed by the blue hotel chain there, which would be really interesting. That would be, I think, one of the most explosive plays of the game. And Josh goes ahead and he makes that red hotel also invulnerable, also sort of a master hotel. And I assume then, it kind of makes it a little bit more expensive for himself to buy these stocks, but I assume he's going to kind of continue on that plan from before. And he does exactly that, where he buys those 3 stocks in there. Again, I assume he's sort of got limited play options there. I'm not sure the thinking of I'm going to make it more expensive and then buy it. It becomes more expensive for Brent too, but he knows that Brent has $1 bajillion on hand. I think pretty much exactly $1 bajillion. One of the things that's interesting, if you watch the recording of this, by the way, is that Gray at this point somewhere around this point in the game, his demeanor just shifts a lot. Like I think that he gets more chatty and is more curious about like options and strategy. Like he wants to learn. I think that he sort of is like realizing how far behind he is, how bad the situation is feeling for him, and wants to learn from the experience. I do know that he was not excited to play Acquire as his choice of game for this. And Brent's going to just go ahead and open Quantum again there, which is just such a dream. That hotel has just done everything for him, made him all sorts of cash in the interim as it keeps getting eaten up over and over and over again. Big shareholder bonuses every time. What a funky dynamic in a game. I really have to wonder, I'm not like rich enough or high powered enough to know like if in real life there's something to this sort of stock accounting strategy. It seems a little Enron-esque to me. But what do I know? I'm but a lowly normie when it comes to the finances. Man, let's take a moment also to pour one out for Hydra up in the top left corner there. That's just been like, everybody bought all the stocks in it. We were very, very excited for its IPO. It opens up and then it just sort of has like lived its life over there doing absolutely nothing all game long. Could just be luck of the draw. Could be that Josh is holding onto those tiles and doesn't want to expand them. I'm not really sure. Brent goes on the offensive. He says, take Saxon. That's fine by me. I'm going to push into a company that is going to be acquired. I'll jump from that 5 up to 8. Good thing I was paying attention. You'll notice here, by the way, that I made a mistake by accidentally overwriting my equations. So I'm going to fix that really quickly. The numbers are a little wonky for Josh and Brent right now for that reason, but their actual stock values will return in a second. You see Brent there going for a second bathroom break. And hey, man, if he is hydrating as much as I did during this event, that's the way to go. If you play with me, I get up and leave the table and run to the restroom at least once a game. I think if that's not what you're doing, you need to be drinking more water. That's my tip to you. Gray there, repping the Aquafina. So, everybody who's good, they know you got to drink water. Drink more water. 3, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. Green's now a safe stock there in the middle. Maybe Gray is thinking that he doesn't want Brent to kind of cash out again. I actually don't even know what Gray can do to get back into this game. He needs Zeta to be consumed so that he has some more cash on hand. I guess that would be sort of the dream is expanding that bottom right yellow hotel, making it bigger, making it get consumed so you can get some stocks so you can start playing the game again. But at this point, he's just watching himself circle the drain as now the corrected values show that Brent is more than double his value. Josh is 50% more than his value, and he's just in trouble here. Josh is sort of realizing that he did a little switcheroo with Brent, and he is more cash strapped than Brent is. That being said, $400 for those purple stocks is not a problem, and nicely for Josh, there are only 4 purple stocks remaining. And if he does a count on those and sort of has a decent memory of what it looks like for Gray and for Brent and where they're at, he'll know that buying 3 of those is going to actually put him in a safe position, right? He would go up to 10. There would only be 1 stock left, and he would maintain control of I keep wanting to call it Tower because I think that's what it was called in the version of the game that I've played. But Phoenix, the purple one. Now, as he's expanding Saxon, it makes I actually wonder maybe Josh just had a bunch of tiles that expanded Saxon. He was like, I refuse to expand this hotel chain for another person. This is why this is my choice of attack on Brent rather than any of the others. Could be. We're going to enter the stage of the game soon where things slow down. My throat's starting to hurt me, so I can't fill in all of the talking space, but it's going to slow down because they're going to ask for stock counts again and again and again as they count the stocks. I do not like hidden information in games. I'm going to take a drink of water, and then I'm going to go on a tirade about why I think hidden information is garbage. Okay. First of all, if you want your game to have memory, great. If that's the skill that you want to test, how good are people at remembering things? Great. Totally go for that. No criticisms or judgment if you like that. However, I don't think that it's a great gameplay mechanism. How about this? I shouldn't talk about it objectively. I'm going to talk about it subjectively. I don't find it to be a fun gameplay mechanism. I'm pretty decent at memory. I'm not as amazing as people who are like memory masters or anything like that, but I'm decent at it. But the thing is that memorizing things, Josh did a good job there. He bought the purples, just like we said. Memorizing things requires you to just put all of these brainwaves, all of your cognitive, not all of, but a lot of your cognitive effort into those components. And so you get yourself in a situation where for most normal people, you are tasking your working memory to an excessive level to keep this information in your head, which means that you are more likely to not be thinking about sort of plays in the game. And then if you say, hey, out the window with the memory component, I'm just going to focus on playing really well, you might miss out on some opportunities or not have the correct or appropriate information to make the right decisions because of the hidden information there. So it really just ends up benefiting people with the best working memory, like the biggest cognitive brains. And I mean, if the goal of our gaming is to just essentially say, hey, who's the smartest, who's able to do the most mental operations at the same time, then okay, I don't really find that to be sort of the point of gaming. I don't think that it's terribly interesting to see who has better memory in these components. It's definitely a valuable skill. I just don't think that it's very fun. And as someone who can do it and doesn't want to do it, I just don't think it's very fun. And I shouldn't say it's bad again, because if you do think it's fun, that's amazing. Like you are welcome to enjoy that. It's just not for me. Brent goes ahead and says, all right, well, you can defend your purple, but I'll go back to defending my reds, and buys up over on that. There's also big differences in the memory types of games, right? If you're talking about something like El Grande, and it has the tower where everybody puts in, some cubes in there, you're essentially remembering one number per player, and you really have to remember that number. Whereas a game like this, there's so much to remember. And you saw Gray had maybe you didn't see, I saw Gray had his cards kind of laid out in a pattern before. I assumed that he had some little code system he was using to remember who was where with what on the stock situations, or whether he was up or down. Generally, with a game like this, you want some sort of gimmicky card counting system rather than just straight up trying to put all this information in your brain. Because look at this, right? At 7 different stocks with a certain number of pieces of information in them. And this is why people are going to keep asking over and over again, hey, how many stocks are remaining? And the amount of time that people are like, stocks, there's 6 remaining. I've got 10 of them, right? Let's look at Saxon right now. 6 remaining. I've got 10 of them. Okay, well, I don't think Gray has bought any. So you've got 9. Great, right on. So you can remember sort of some of the basic things. It starts getting even more complicated when there's more players, of course. But then they have to keep checking over and over and over again. It becomes this very taxing process where they're not playing the game. They're playing did I remember the game state correctly? I just don't think it's very interesting. All right. Back to the game. Brent expanded the size of Phoenix. That might be because of limited tile options. It might be because he says, hey, you know what? I'm second place there. This expansion here for Zeta is really nice for Gray. We like to see that for the underdog who we're rooting for, but who's just probably too far behind at this point. I think the other thing that's funny is Josh is so focused in this game. This is the thing too about actually my whole tirade about memory stuff. I think Josh is really focused in this game because he's trying to keep everything in his head. He's trying to make the right decisions, but he also needs to remember all the information. I'm deeply less pleasant to play with when I'm playing a game like this because I just am not going to engage because you're going to distract me and I don't want to be distracted. And so my strategy for disengaging socially is to be slightly more cold to you. And so, obviously a lot of that is just because I'm being very focused. But also, I don't want to encourage you to interact with me in those instances where I'm playing like that. And I don't like to be that way in games until I need to stop and think. I would pretty sure that if I was playing this game, I would just be completely zeroed in. Unless I just said, hey, I'm going to play this game fast and loose and I don't really care about making the correct choices. I'll just kind of make the heuristic ones. Josh is out of cash. This is bad for him because he can no longer contest Saxon like he was trying to do. He ended up buying some Zeta stocks, I think just because he was out of money and wanted to get kind of involved there. And again, we see a situation where the price of it went up and then he ended up buying it, which is just a little bit awkward for situations that you're in. The funny thing too is that Josh ends up getting more money here because Gray's just sort of stuck. He actually ends up getting to buy 3 more stock to hop up to 8 and then hopefully take over shareholder there, which is what he needs to do to close the gap to Brent, is just trying to break parity somewhere where Brent isn't. But again, how miserable is that for Gray, who just really everything is on yellow there. Brent continues to have all of the important pieces as he does the merger here between American and Phoenix. Really interesting in the sense of it pays Josh more. And Josh was about to be broke. I wonder if Brent didn't have legal plays or if he chose this to be the play. Because knowing what I know, I think this is a mistake. Josh has no money on hand. You have run of the board. Just let it continue to expand very slowly. You're in charge of the majority of corporations. If the game ended right now, Brent would win. We know that. I suspect that Brent knows that. The one thing that is interesting, though, is when you merge, you get to be the first person to trade in stocks for other stocks. That would be really nasty if American had not a lot of stocks left in the bank, but American has barely been purchased this game. And so players who are now, and everybody's doing this because basically there's almost no more space. Actually, maybe there's literally no space. There's one tile, 8G, where a new Phoenix corporation could rise from the ashes. But aside from 8G, if you're not holding that tile 8G, you know this corporation is not coming back. So I'm just assuming that both Brent and Gray didn't have that location because they immediately cashed out. Brent said, I'm going to get into American because I'm turning these through, into $800 stocks. I would like to do that and contest for the shareholder bonus rather than otherwise. And Gray says, you know what? I just need the cash. I'm not going to be buying blue stocks. You guys already both have 4. I'm going to compete for green or compete for yellow just as some way to get back into the game. Really unfortunate that he can't convert into that blue stock company. But then again, that blue stock price is not going to rise a ton from there, right? Like once you get into the teens, the rate of progression really, really slows down for stock price increasing. So, he gets more money out of Phoenix than he would for value of these shares. But Josh says, look, I want to be in charge. I want to be a majority shareholder. I'm not going to mess around. I'm not going to play. I'm going to turn all 10 of these in for 5 blue stocks. So I'm in charge. So even if Brent buys 3 right now, I'm still the master of this stock easily. And I assume that none of these players have a G. Otherwise, maybe keeping 1 or 2 Phoenix stocks would be a neat or clever little thing to do for the opportunity to kind of cash out on shareholder bonus one more time as it gets consumed by something. Now they're going to think for a while about what to buy. I think having 10 stock with the other player having 9 stock is pretty nice, especially with Brent sitting right after Josh, because if Josh buys 3 of them, great. Brent buys the other 3. So he doesn't need to buy those stocks. He's good there. He might be a little bit nervous about Gray picking up some greens. And so I would consider maybe having bought 1 or 2 greens to sort of put the nail in that coffin there. That being said, I think Brent said, you know what? I just want to force Josh's hand here. I'm going to push into America, which we know is going to be very valuable. I have a ton of cash on hand. I'm not going to be buying Quantum, certainly. I'm already in charge there. So I see that play. I think I still maybe would have gone greens. And we see then Gray does exactly what I suggested, which is he pushes into green to essentially try to take control, break up a little bit of Brent's absolute domination over 1, 2, 3, still 4 corporations that he's in charge of. Kind of wanted to counter their actual stocks. So Gray right now has 15, 24 stocks. Brent's got 20, 34, 41 stocks. And Josh has 18, 24, 29, 31, but he's probably going to buy 3 more, and he was the last player to go, so 34. So literal quantities of stocks as well as values of stocks unsurprisingly favor Brent here. And that comes down to the fact that he had money to be buying things, kind of repeatedly from turn to turn to turn, and didn't swap in a 2-for-1 quite as many as Josh did, for instance, there, which again I thought was the correct choice, or felt that way to me. The one nice thing I think for Gray about that merger finally happening, even though he was third place and really kind of got boxed out of any real value there, is that if he had any of those pieces in the top right corner that he was sort of just waiting to play, he now has options of what to do with those tiles. Jump up here on the size of Zeta. It's pretty interesting. It's a big spike. And then I assume Josh is going to... I assume he's going to try to take over Zeta here. I mean, it's rude. Sucks for Gray. Better to just defend American. But, if Brent buys over on his American, you got to be worried about the fact that there are 9 stocks left. Because if Brent buys 3 and goes to 10, and then Josh buys 3 and goes to 12, and then Brent buys 3 and goes to 13, that really sucks for him. So I actually think maybe doing 2 yellows and 1 blue would be the safer play, knowing where Brent is at. That being said, if Josh has a merger tile, he can then just at any, when he makes that merger happen, swap 2 of those yellows into a blue, and that just solves the problem for him anyway. Yeah, maybe that's just the case. Maybe Josh actually has a merger tile that is going to have American get gobbled up next round. Sorry, not American. America will be the gobbler, eating that yellow Zeta hotel chain. And I do really wonder if players just haven't drawn the merger tiles. I mean, there's still tiles in the bag, or if they're holding on to the very significant ones. I mean, that orange one is like comical, up in the top left corner, how it's set up at this point in time. Brent goes ahead and says, all right, I'm not going to contest American. That's way too much work. Instead, I'm just going to hold on to green. Part of the reason I'm going to do this is because Gray is the easiest player to fight. He doesn't have as much money as everyone else, so he's going to run out of cash going through there. And again, Brent actually gets to buy up to 10 there. 10's kind of a nice magic number that you see Brent at a bunch. First of all, it's a magic number because, you get 1 free stock and then you go +3, +3, +3. But 10 is 3 away from the magic number of 13, where you're guaranteed to be majority shareholder in that stock of 25 stocks. And then Gray uses his piddly amount of money to tie up in the Zeta Corporation. Hoping maybe that Josh will initiate a merger here. But I think that if Josh does have the tile for a merger, he can essentially just buy another yellow stock and merge next turn. So we won't really know for sure if he has it, because I think that he can wait to do that, so he can just sort of be the majority shareholder on his own. Because he still has money on hand right now, right? He still has options. Which, again, I think it might be worth flexing on red. It's not like he's going to be buying. Definitely no purples. Quantum, he's just too far behind. certainly not going to be buying any greens. He might buy a defensive share of blue. I would say 1 blue, 1 red, and then whatever else his heart desires. Probably a red. Oh, no, a yellow. That's what he does. Yellow, blue, red. That's the ideal purchase right now, which is, again, this has to be something that we know better than they do, right? Because we're looking at the tracked values in a way that they just can't. And I wonder, like, if we remove this, does this game become unplayable? Like, is it just then very boring and very obvious? Like, hey, you need to do this. It's best for you here. You know that you need to buy these kinds of stocks. Or does it make it sort of the same tension? Is there an excitement in the mystery of not knowing who has how many stocks? Because that kind of thing happens, right? A lot of players are going to just say like, hey, all right, well, I'm going to do this and hopefully I'm the majority shareholder. Oh, nope, you have more than me? That sucks. What a bummer. Or, oh, I didn't realize that you only had 5 and I have 7. That's amazing. Good thing that these other players bought them or didn't have the money or whatever it was. And so I think that there are moments of fun in the mystery of that. I just think that those kind of like mystery surprise moments can be captured in ways that don't make you feel dumb. Maybe that's kind of my beef with the memory aspect, is that I don't want to feel dumb, and I definitely do, because it is trackable, it is countable. Like, in theory, if you put your mind to it, that could be something that you have in there. And get to do a little side story time, because Josh is going to take his sweet time thinking here about what it is that he wants to do. My sister and I both, we used to be educators, and we both ran this kind of like psych program for kids where they'd practice their cognitive skills. And one of the things that we'd show them is tricks for long-term memory. And some of the tricks that folks use for long-term memory are, literally these like mnemonic devices that these memory masters use to just remember the most ridiculous stuff. And Alex, my sister, used it really effectively to, I think, remember like 200 digits of pi or something like that. And she's not someone that I would be like, oh, she has like a perfect brain for doing something like that. Like, there really are like systems and dedications that you can, use to sort of make those things happen. You have to practice, it's about a lot of practice. But there are tricks. And so, like, if you wanted to get really good at this game, how much of it is you having to practice the skill of the game, and how much of it is practicing the skill of what memory might look like? Josh goes ahead and makes a buy that's kind of similar to what I had said with the 1 yellow, 1 blue, 1 red, but he doesn't end up pressing the issue on the reds, unfortunately. I say unfortunately because I'm just rooting for the circumstances that make for the tightest game, and since Brent's winning, he's the enemy right now, unfortunately. I do think it's really interesting, though, that Josh has essentially caught up in value over time here. And I think a large part of that is because of the Zeta stocks and the value of those as they've continued to go up, whereas Brent is just sort of waiting for the game to advance to a different state. The corporations that he's bought into, he's either waiting for them to merge, but there's not really anywhere for them to get bigger, right? Like, if with the exception of like a few tiles, with the exception of 2 tiles, 3 tiles, whatever, there's a couple of exceptions. For the most part, though, red and orange and green, which are Brent's big, companies, and Quantum down there, are just waiting for that time where they touch each other and end it. And to that point, since he's the majority shareholder in all 3 of those, I think what the other players hope is that they just don't grow bigger, right? They don't want any mergers to take place amongst any of those three. And so I think nearest to the ideal situation here for Josh is merger between blue and yellow, and then merger between yellow and teal, because that will nearly end the game. But orange essentially has to merge at some point in time because it is not safe. So for the game to end, you need to have all of those corporations be out there. And then now we're at this part where it's like, all right, well, what other stocks are folks buying? And Brent, maybe unbeknownst to the other player, is broke now. He's broke because Gray essentially put him into a situation where he had to continue to buy stocks in green, which is what we were talking about before. Like to contest the main player, they need to make sure that they're putting the effort into that exchange there. Josh could then buy into Saxon, take over the company, and like that is his opportunity, I think, to play catch up. And you see right here, he's tied. He's tied with Brent right now because of the amount of money that he just made off of Zeta. So all of a sudden, very abruptly, Josh becomes live in this game, certainly at least with modern cash. We do know that Brent is a majority stockholder on 4 of the 5 remaining hotels. So that means he's got a lot more bonuses than Josh does. But if Josh can take away the red one and take it for himself, maybe this is a live game, right? Like he has the opportunity to sort of do something here because Brent has got his hands tied a little bit. Players here go ahead and make Josh makes a little bit of a switcheroo into blue stocks. Gray just says, I'm cashing out. I don't need any of those blue stocks. They're not important to me. Josh just wants to make sure that he's fully safe. I think, though, monetarily, Josh does lose out a little bit there, right? Because those blue stocks are only 900, whereas the yellow stocks, I want to say 1, 2, 3, 4. I want to say they were maybe 600 or 700. Let's say 600. So he's losing out at $300 every 2-to-1 swap there. But it prevents him to having to make any buys. I think he makes a push on quantum. I mean, it's great that he's making a push on something. It needs to be red, I think. He doesn't necessarily know what Brent's situation is, but red would have been better. Maybe not. Maybe he can do both, right? If he has enough time. But he takes over the red right now in case anything weird happened. I think red would have been better. Because around the time you're buying that quantum, the game is ending anyway. So the difference at this stage of I want to be the majority shareholder in something that merges versus I want to be the majority shareholder in something that lasts to the end of the game is functionally the same, especially for Josh, who's got $8,700 in cash on hand. Doesn't matter to him if he's first or second there now or first or second later. He just cares if he's first or second, right? Like I'm saying that the timing of it doesn't matter, because I could see an argument for him buying the teal now, saying, hey, that's going to merge soon. Maybe it's going to be the next merger. Maybe even Josh has the merging tile. I'm going to take it over, and then I'm going to merge it so that I get the majority. I mean, I get it. I do. I just think that the red is more important. And he knows the game isn't even going to end until orange is there anyway. there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 orange merger tiles. You have to imagine some of them are owned by Josh at some point. And Josh sees that Brent didn't buy anything. So he now has to know, if he didn't already know, that Brent is broke. Because why wouldn't Brent defend Quantum? So now I agree with this play, right? You've already committed to going into Quantum. So he'll buy those. And this could be the comeback. I mean, if nothing changes right now, then Josh has the opportunity to make a run on reds too. Like really what Josh is hoping for is nothing to be able to be played by anyone. However, the board is getting really cluttered. Like, let's see. I guess all of those tiles on the right, everything that's F and over is still playable. And we see those sort of like northern tiles Brent just played up there. Gray filling that gap over there. For the red. So yeah, there's a few more playable tiles than I maybe thought there were, but we're running out, right? Like and we can't connect the greens and the blues and the greens and the reds because they're all safe hotels. So there's a number of just dead tiles out there. Let's see if we can do a quick count. 4, 6, 8, 10, 11, 12, 13, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19. 21, 4, 5, 7, 8, 30, 34, 36. 36 spaces out there. And 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 of those 36 spaces are illegal plays because they would force a merger that can't happen between blue, green, or red. So about a third of the tiles are not playable right now. And given that more rounds have gone by, we would expect actually that players have more. There's a selection bias of what tiles have been played and haven't been played. So we would expect there's more. Let's say maybe 50% of the players' tiles are just not useful. And then let's look at that blue chain over there because it seems to have the most holes. 3, 5, 7, 10, 11, 12, 13. 13 tiles playable to expand the ridiculous blue empire. And so like a third there, a third dead tiles, and then the rest are kind of like action tiles. I gotta assume that Josh is holding the mergers for orange because, again, he wants the game to go on so that he can use his money to sort of keep this parity break going as long as possible. 2 reds and a teal, probably. I don't really see what else he would consider buying at this point. If he buys 2 reds, he suddenly becomes the majority shareholder of 3 of the corporations. And he just leans into quantum. I've got to be missing something here. It's not like the price on quantum is so great that he can like 2-to-1 them in at a value that he loves. Quantum's just too expensive to do the 2-to-1 with. Could this game end actually without the orange merger? It's possible. If blue is actually at 28, let's see, 5, 9, 11, 15, 18, 19, 23, 26, 28. I'm doing a good job updating that. Blue's actually at 28, and it consumes teal. It's another 4, so that'd be 32. There's definitely space for 9 more tiles over there. So it actually is theoretically possible that the orange one doesn't merge by the end of the game. That seems very difficult to achieve, but it is theoretically possible. Man, I think that if Josh actually buys into those reds last turn, he really is just in such a better position, because now if he buys into the reds and then Brent happened to draw one of the mergers, Brent can swap his stocks in for red. So he really wanted to rush it as fast as possible. And if he had, we'd be in a position right now where Josh would be taking his turn. And, well, I mean, Gray's taking his turn right now, I guess. But where Josh would be taking his turn. Oh, no. Where is Brent still finishing? I've lost the weave. Either way. Josh would be taking his turn and nailing the coffin on reds. And then suddenly he would be in charge of 3 of the remaining 5 corporations. And as we see, the cash values are right there. That means that he maybe takes over and wins. Depends on the size of the corporations, of course, but he owns American, which is the biggest, and Quantum, which is the smallest. But the point is that the size of the corporations, not the size, the price of the corporations and their associated bonuses are quite close with each other. I have to assume from those faces that it's actually Brent's turn. I don't see the star player card anywhere. But I thought I just saw him lay a tile, and I don't think he has any cash, so maybe he saved some? Or maybe I missed some. That's also possible, but I don't see why he wouldn't be buying things in the last few rounds if he was out of cash. I do think it's really interesting. Brent was very chatty, helpful earlier, and he's gotten really quiet. Him and Gray have like switched positions in terms of their chattiness and engagement. And I think, a big part of that is Brent's at the end, doesn't want to drop the ball, kind of really focused, knows he's in the lead, but he can feel that player coming up. And Gray is just, he knows he's dead. His body language is very, very casual right now. Okay, so it did pass around back to Josh's turn. He's just deciding what to play. I don't know what he could have been debating. I don't think he wants orange to merge. I don't think he wanted to expand green either, but it's better than merging orange, and he must not have that many other choices. Expanding blue would be the obvious choice. And he doesn't want to merge teal into something that he doesn't own. So he doesn't want to merge teal into green. Maybe he was debating whether he wanted to merge teal into red. There he goes, buying more teal. I don't get it. See it. 14, because 14 is, he's overkilled on teal ownership there. Here we go. Gray's excited because he's just been waiting for this for a million years. It's not even that good for him. It is nice for Brent, right? Because as a majority of both of those, he gets to do a couple things here. He finally gets to cash in. He gets to ensure that he has total control of green. I think the play here when you cash in is he literally just, let's see. I think you literally just sell all of them. Then you see what gray does. If gray doesn't swap into any greens, you buy the 3 reds to close the nail there. If gray does flip into any number of greens, you buy 1 green and 2 reds because that's the amount that Josh could tie at. Or you play it conservatively and you swap 2 oranges for a green, guaranteeing that you have control of the green. Buy 3 reds, guaranteeing that you have control of the 3 reds. Then you just ride the game from there. Which I think, knowing the scores here, is the situation. Man, if Josh buys the reds like I suggested, I think he would have won. We'll have to see what it looks like when we put in the final scores, if there's sort of a switch there. But that would be, it seems like it'd be significant. It's so hard to tell with the valuations of things because, well, no. Essentially, the green and blue hotel majority ownerships wipe with each other. Yeah, see, this is the mistake that Brent makes. I didn't actually even think about this part of it. But gray basically talks Josh into splitting 2 of his oranges for a green so that control is split between Brent and gray, which is totally the right call because it's only a net negative of $500 for Josh in value, but splitting that shareholder bonus is very significant. I do think this was an oversight for Brent, and one that I also missed when I was talking about it. But like I said, the conservative play was to swap into the 1 green, buy the 3 reds, put the nail in those coffins, and then I think you're good to just ride it out. Now it gets a little bit dicier. Not that there's anything you can do about it. You still make the same play. You still buy the 3 reds. Yeah. Anyway, so greens and blues, those essentially wipe out, and then we're looking at whatever happens with quantum. It's not going to expand. So that's 5,000 for Josh and 2,500 for Brent. So we've got a little bit over a $10,000 gap here. It closes 2,500 of that gap. And then we'd be looking at red. Yeah, you know what? Now that I'm saying it out loud, I don't know. It's probably not enough money to have taken the reds to take this game away from Brent. I actually think at this point he has a locked victory at this stage. But we got another little bit to go to ensure that that's the case. But I think that moving into reds there was the opportunity that Josh had to maybe take that away from him, if there was one. And for gray, to go back actually to that decision about gray moving into the green stocks, maybe with the split majority shareholder bonus, it actually made sense. But if he doesn't get Josh's collusion on that, which he did, and it was, I think, easy to do so, he actually was downgrading value, right? The $1,400 of 2 orange stocks versus the $900 value of the green stocks is downgrading in value if you don't count that shareholder bonus. So it probably does end up working out for him in the way that those bonus values are split, but not by a lot. So at this point, Quantum just needs to merge with something. Obviously, Josh wants it to fold into blue to potentially increase the stock price over there. And you know what we're going to do? Is we're going to skip ahead. So let me pause and skip ahead because I don't think these final motions here are very important. I think we know exactly what's happening here. Yeah, let's do it. Okay, so we've skipped ahead a teeny bit. Brent went ahead and played the merger tile to merge teal into green, which I don't know if he just drew that action. He probably wasn't. Yeah, he must have, right? Because what does he care if Josh had the majority shareholder? There's no way he was going to stop it, and he needed the money. So I assume that he just recently drew it and wasn't like waiting on it. I guess it doesn't really matter one way or another what he did, but plus if he could have generated that merger earlier, he then could have put the nail in the coffin of green and gotten, because we knew that Brent was kind of stuck on his liquidity issue for those last number of turns. And paying out there obviously closes the gap for Josh because now we've removed the hotel that he was in charge of. However, there is still a gap there, and Brent controls the majority and the partial majority, or the shared majority, I guess I should say, in green. And in red. Now they have sort of this like hullabaloo about this like bizarre rule in this game about like how acquire ends, which is essentially like the players agree to. And I think they at this point all kind of know, but the GMs are just sort of making sure that they're clear on what the process is about like how things expand out. Gray's talking a lot about how like the tiles here were played and like what could or could not happen. But to Brent's point, like there's nothing that can change here. The people who own the majority own the majority. The only thing that can change is maybe the size of the various locations, but red is absolutely capped at its size, and blue and green both are kind of like over their maxes here. I think it's possible for blue 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Nope, 8. The most it could become 39, so it's not going to cross into that 40 threshold. So at this point, they're going to go ahead and move on to say like, yep, that's the end of it. And I think Gray is just showing here that he's got a bunch of dead tiles in the middle there. So they're just confirming. Let me pause. I'll skip ahead to the scoring because I don't think we need to go through the process of all the scoring here. All right, so while they were scoring here, I also ended up scoring it on my side. And after sort of adding their bonuses and their values there, you can see that Brent ends up with 66, Josh at 54, and Gray at 31, kind of well behind. So pretty close there. No, not pretty close, but like relatively close. That whole line that I suggested about Josh moving into red versus Brent, that difference would have been $7,000 basically, right? Because he's up $3,500 and Brent is down $3,500. So that makes it a much, much closer gap if he does that. So actually maybe in some ways it's better that the gap is a little bit further here as they count those final things. But congratulations to Brent. That was, he basically got ahead with it at the beginning and just sort of stuck with it the whole way, which is, he clearly knew what he was doing in this game and just sort of kind of pushed that. It was a little bit rougher for Gray, who just seemed to have a harder time getting the action. And I think Josh did, just about everything that he could to try to close the gap there with a little bit of a slower beginning than the other players. But he got his hands in a lot of different pies, which is what he needed to do because he wasn't in charge, and then tried to take the opportunities to take over when he did. So I thought that was a pretty good learning experience for me. So now I actually am a bit more prepared for playing Acquire next year. I hope that you enjoyed my conversation through it. And if you like, check out my other videos. Last week I did Blood Rage. We started with Azul. So we've gone through a whole lot of them by now, and we're going to keep on going. Thanks everyone for watching. Have a wonderful day.